Hi, this is Mr. Shelton. Saturday, November 14th, 2020. Okay, just giving you a little refresher on shading. So I already got my sketch here. So what you did, you found your thumbnails on Schoology, or if you're not looking at Schoology, you created your own still life. Remember, for my class, you got to show me the thumbnails Monday. I want you to show at least one cone, one cylinder, one sphere, and one cube. You notice I drew them out, and I imagined I saw the whole things. You know, when I'm drawing this, I want to make sure it falls through. So I actually, you can see I had a scrap paper behind it, so I could plot out what it would look like it went all the way out in the bottom too. That way, I know that when I pull it away, my arcs are consistent on top and bottom. I do the cube and try to mimic perspective. It's important that whatever this angle is, this is the same. Now that would change if it was very tall. We'd start, as it broke the horizon line, it would start angling in the other direction, we get flatter, but at this distance they're more or less the same, and that this is a reverse of that angle. You can't get all cockeyed, and I like to see the whole thing. Remember, whatever's closest to you is going to be, whatever's in front is going to be lower on the page. So have that consistent. The thing that's in front, the thing that shows up in front of the other objects, that's lower than that part. This is back here. So we're really not going to see that part, but we want to make sure it all lines up. Now, a lot of people have trouble drawing the cylinder. What I do is I divide it in half and use that to kind of make sure that both sides, little by little, line up. Remember, whatever this arc is, gets repeated up here and then reversed on the top. So spend some time making sure, remember, your composition, you should be thinking about negative space. You should be thinking about rule of thirds or whatever rule you want to use. Now, what I did here, you don't have to do it so hard, but I want you to be conscious of the interaction between the objects. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to clean that up a little so you can see the negative space made where the objects interact. We can get rid of some of this now. Right, so I like to go ahead and just kind of check that out, make sure that all looks satisfactory. How are the objects interacting with each other? And so I'm actually not going to see this anymore, right? Let's be clear. Okay. So, I'm nice and loose and light, just like when we learned to draw. I'm not trying to draw perfect. I was very loose. You know how much sketching I had to do to get this circle as circular as I wanted it. Okay, so I think that's good enough. Now to start shading, we're going to have a light source. So let's put a lamp over here. That'll be our light source. Obviously, if you took one, let me see if I can tighten that. For some reason, I got cut off, so I had to start again. I'll just tape them together, put them together in Premiere. And if you take my multimedia class, you can learn how to use Premiere. Okay, so here's our light source coming in. Now, think of your shadow as being, your shadow's fighting the light source. The light source coming in this way, your shadows are coming that way. We talked about different kinds of shadows in class. So I'm going to have a variety of pencils. I have my eraser to do my highlights with. I have a sharpener to keep my pencil sharp. Remember, I want to hold my pencil, up. I don't want my hand dragging the paper. If you look up at your hand and you've got big, charcoal all over here, or some people get it on their palm real bad, it means you're smearing your work. I personally don't care if your hand gets dirty, but I don't like you smearing your work. So if you're one of those people who does that, try to practice maybe holding your pencil like this. Use your pinky as like an axis. That keeps it. If that doesn't work, put your hand under this hand so you're not smudging the paper, or maybe even put down a paper towel or something, or a scrap piece of paper. So my spotlight, my light's coming in here, let's say. So that's my light source. So I'm going to use just to remind you, okay, don't really label your paper. I'm just showing you, okay? So your light source is here. Wherever your light's coming from, you could have two light sources, right? I know you're not really reading that, but you understand what I'm saying. So I'm going to start on the shadow that's facing it. Notice this curve here. My shadow should always follow my shading should also always follow the body of the object. So I'm trying to find what those arcs would look like so I get used to that, right? So I'm going to start finding that. And again, I don't want my finger rubbing the paper. And I'll start soft. And I'm these are called hatching lines. They're in one direction. They're more or less parallel to each other. They don't have to be perfectly parallel. And little by little, I've built up my shadow. Now that's a very light pencil in H. That'll take me forever. If I was doing this for a grade like you, I would sit there forever my H, but I'm gonna move ahead a little bit, and I'm gonna come in with a 2B. Where's my 2B? Here's a 2B. Let me just sharpen it real quick. Just be entertained by the music. It's Grateful Dead and Winterland in 1975. Actually, it's, I think, New Year's. When is this? It's New Year's taking them from, 78 to 79. They're Winterland in San Francisco. So, little by little, start building this up. Sharpen this, get darker. You know, there's 3 ways to get darker. More lines, darker pencil, press harder. Okay, so remember, always follow the surface. This is following that arc, so all my lines. Now, eventually, you're gonna build this up. I'm not gonna spend enough time to do it. I'll just do part of it here. I have to get a weird angle around the camera. So I'm gonna build this up, and at the center of this shadow, now, what you don't wanna have are these little loopy rings on the back, on the side here that I'm having. That's a bad sign. That means I'm rushing and I'm hooking it around. You don't wanna hook. It looks disgusting now. Don't hook. You want to be patient and end straight. Don't get little hooks on the end to show you're impatient. I'm doing it again. But I am showing you I am impatient. So you're going to spend time building this up. And if you want to see a finished one, you have to go look at Schoology. There's samples there. Right now, I don't have the time to spend 2 weeks, not a week. It would take me about 40 minutes to probably get a nice one here. But anyway, the center of your shadow is going to be darkest. And I'm going very fast. You don't be so. And that darkest part is called, anybody remember, that's your core shadow, Now, as we get closer to the edge, obviously this side's away from the light source, so it continues to be dark. And remember, you don't want to look like you have layers of shadows. You want to work them together so it looks like a natural bleed. You don't want to have it where it's like suddenly too light and it looks like, you just have tiers or layers. You want it to blend easily. Again, you should avoid those hooks. I was going fast to show you a lesson. I hope you go slower and don't have those hooks. But what I'm getting to the point is, even though our light's coming in this way, and it gets darker, our core dark is not at the edge. It's here at the center of the shadow. Because it's round, light wraps around a little bit. So you get that little halo of light coming in from this side. You can even use your eraser to kind of pull that out a little. Make sure it's on the object, not around the object. It's actually on the object, okay? And it would be the same for a circle or anything else, okay? Once we get to this thing, now obviously with a square, it's a little darker. You don't have that wrap around with the shadow. It stays pretty dark. But at this point, we're flat, and I'm gonna follow that angle with this shading. The same angle as this, and this in reverse. I always follow the angle of my surface. Get darker as we get towards the edge. Now you can do a little cross hatching to tie it together, but make sure you're going in the correct direction. Don't overdo it. A little cross hatching, loose cross hatching holds it together a little bit. Don't overdo it. Let it get dark. See, unlike the circular things, we get dark at the edge here because there's no light wrapping around. There's no circle. So you're getting the idea here. Okay. And then our circle, try to do this. I think of it, before I even start, I start thinking of like a beach ball or a volleyball. I'll go like this first. Think about how it stretches, right? And how it gets flatter towards the middle. So my strokes up here are gonna be a little rounder, they get a little flatter to the surface, then they change. And again, I'm thinking my light source is coming this way. So I'm gonna get darker towards my core. My core goes towards the edge because the light's coming in here. But it doesn't go all the way to the edge because it's a rounded surface. And I'm going fast. I don't want yours to look like this. I want yours to look like you took small, dainty strokes and like look at the samples, built it up over time. This is my demo. And you could think of the volleyball going this way too. So remember, the darkest part, let me get my ebony pencil so I can accent that. The darkest part is that core in the middle. And you're following the shape of the ball. You're curving with the ball at all times. And this one down here. Now we have a little bit of a reflected shadow. Maybe we see a little bit of this reflecting on the ball here, but it still takes that shape. You know, where one object reflects onto another object, that's called reflected shadow, right? Okay, and we know this would be same thing. We're following that shape, even though it goes off the page. We get to the center, that's the core. Everybody with me? I know I'm not doing a full drawing because I'm not spending all that time on this, but you should be getting the idea. Okay, the other kind of light, reflected light. Remember your cast shadow. You can't even see that. Let me put it up here. There. Cast shadow. Cast, like casting a net, casting. Think about where your light source is. And your cast shadow comes in the opposite of that. So this would be over here, and they'd intermingle, right? This one would cast over here, and the ball would cast over here, and the cylinder would cast there, and everything would cast its shape outwards. Now, here's the thing about cast shadow. Even though this shadow might be rounded like a ball, right? Let me move this over a little. Even though this shadow might be rounded like a ball, it's on a flat table. So my cast shadow is going to be flat strokes. You see that? Even though it's a curved shape, I don't do my shadows according to the shape of the shadow. This has a square shadow, but that is, I go by the surface. So since all these objects are on the same surface, my strokes, regardless of the shape of the shadow, whether it's a triangular shadow or a round shadow, they're all going to be on the same flat surface, and they're going to all meld together as one shadow. Do you get what I'm saying? So that is very, and here's, I'll put a little reflected shadow in there. Take your eraser at the end, find your highlights, get all your lights there on the edge of your curved area. I do that. And that's your basic shading. Let me put a little cross hatching in the ball, a little more cross hatching in the ball. So you get a sense of that movement. This here. So I know I went quick, but I think I covered all the basic ideas. And at the end, your background, make sure your table is at a reasonable distance away from the object so it doesn't interfere. Your background can just be dark shading. I don't want to get it on the table. That doesn't make sense. Spend your time. Don't use the side of the pencil. It'll look gross. Just be consistent in your shading. And I would get very dark in that background shading. Let it build up over time. Don't do what I did and go so sloppy you're messing up your objects. Okay, so again, another sloppy, quick one. Shows you the basics. Your final is going to look much more refined than this, much more finished, much more delicate in the shading. But this gives you the vocabulary and gives you the basic ideas and the basic things to look out for. Okay, that's all. Again, go to Schoology, look under Still Life student samples for nice finished ones that are far better than your teacher has. But that doesn't mean I'm not brilliant. Okay, bye everybody.